So,
Hit it, Ken.
I'd like to introduce to you a brand new concept we're doing here at ProSoft. Welcome again for coming and listening to the presentation. We do a lot of migration products at Rockwell, trying to help customers take old equipment and move it forward. Some of the things we heard from the field was customers have old PLCs or SLCs on remote I/O, and they want to move it to control logics or compact logics with EtherNet IP, but to get the new network out to all of their distributed I/O, they got to pull Ethernet cables, put in switches, and typically because of the distance, they end up going fiber, right? So there's your problem. You got all those wires all through your plant, and someone says, hey, climb up in there and go add some more fiber to that mess and get it out to all those remote locations. That's a real challenge, that's a real problem. A lot of customers are sitting on the older equipment, not upgrading it because they really struggle with being able to get the Ethernet signal out to those remote locations. What we're showing here is a brand new concept. We're introducing at the show here, and this is a product that basically comes in 3 different pieces. There's a master, and then it's saying client, but it's really master and slave devices out there, and then an occasional repeater if you need to go really long distances. What that really looks like is it's a transparent Ethernet device. This is a good thing because your IT guys said, oh, you got an IP address for that, I got to get security, we got to go through all this thing. This sits on the wire, you don't even know it's there, and by the way, the configuration is 0. Plug it in, get the wires right, blue shield, clear, and power, you're up and running. Plug in your Ethernet ports on the side and you're running. So very, very simple, easy to use. First product we're launching out the door is going to support remote I/O for 57.6 and 115K baud, and then later, end of next year-ish time frame, we'll be coming out with an update, get to 230K baud and have a solution for that as well as Data Highway Plus. Okay, again, it's a master-slave system with repeaters. We can have multiple Ethernet nodes per remote client. So what I want to get into is some of the architectures that'll make more sense. And there's just some simple diagnostics to tell you, is my cable good? Did I wire it right? Yes, good, go. Keep this thing very, very simple. What the product basically does is it grabs Ethernet IP and remote I/O, and you have a remote I/O port on it. It has a 3-port Ethernet switch on it. So at your master station, you'd be putting in your control logics up here on Ethernet. This will be your PLC5 on remote I/O. On the blue hose now leaving another blue hose port. This is the one that's wired in your plant today. You now have broadband baseband on one wire at the same time. So remote I/O's there and the Ethernet signal's on there at the same time. You get to your remote location, you drop in your cabinet, your blue hose comes down the cabinet, you drop in one of our slave devices, hook up the blue hose to it, it now strips off and gives you a remote I/O only signal off a port and Ethernet off that port. So what that looks like is your existing system's out there, my PLC5's out there, could be Flex I/O, could be 1771 I/O chassis out there, but I want to just repurpose the whole network and go straight to Ethernet. So I'm able to put one of these out there, put one of these in the cabinet, and then in that entire architecture now, I'm now running Ethernet IP much faster than the remote I/O ran before over the entire architecture, right? So you can see it's very easy to say, okay, all I want to do is move and get the Ethernet IP. But some customers said, that still requires me to change out all these adapters. Well, for Flex I/O, that's not too bad, but if the 1771 chassis, you don't have an Ethernet adapter there, so you're going to have to go to Flex or you're going to have to go to Control Logics, which means I got to pull all those wires. Well, if I have to change all those at the same time, that's going to take a lot of downtime to do that. So what the product allows you to do is actually run Ethernet IP and remote I/O at the same time. So now I've got my PLC5 running, I've got my I/O out there, and I layer on top of it while the remote I/O is running an Ethernet IP system, and then change over one node at a time and have time to wire that node over. So instead of me having to go out there and change the entire architecture and wire in all the remote nodes, I can do that one rack at a time. I can do that in a much smaller, easier scheduled downtime, minimize the risk, and allow you to move that network forward. So again, initially talked about 57.6 and 115K baud running remote I/O, and we're working on being able to get the 230K baud in the next release. So we've done some tests out there and we saw results anywhere, the minimum, worst case, horrible cable, all the things wrong, 4 megabit per second throughput. Well, I was running 230K at most before, so I'm 8 times faster than I was before. And we've seen as high as even 40 megabits per second. So we've set up some systems with this architecture and did a bunch of produce-consume tags out there looking like remote racks. And I had 73 remote racks out there updating every 30 milliseconds. That's far more I/O than remote ever dreamed of and far faster than remote I/O could ever run it. So there's plenty of bandwidth on the network. The other nice thing this product does is because the Bluehost installations vary in distances, quality of the cable, how long it's been installed, the product actually monitors multiple bands of broadband on that wire and picks the best one for the fastest throughput. So it's auto-tuning. It goes out there and looks at your network, figures out where the optimum bandwidth is. It doesn't pick a channel and say, here's where we're going to send it. Well, what happens if your cable has some extra capacitance there? We got it wrapped around some drives. We got some noise in that frequency band. We're sitting there automatically looking at all the different bands of broadband, finding the best one and sending it through there all in real time. So with that, in the case where I need to go real long distances and we're still in the testing phase, between 1,500 and 2,000 feet before you're going to need a repeater. So we got a sealed repeater, put that out there, another 15,000, 2,000 feet. We can go all the way out to 10,000 feet doing that. So drop these in your cabinets, bring in all your devices, go out the full distances, and you can get Ethernet IP now on your Belden Bluehost system. One of the things I was working with Belden on this thing is they said that, I got some stats from them, they to date have manufactured over 391 million feet of cable. I did a little math on that, and that's enough to wrap around the Earth over 9 times. So that's a lot of Bluehost. Now, all of it's not installed. Okay, so let's say only 10% of it's installed still. 10% of 391 million feet is still a lot of Bluehost, so there's a lot of it still out there. And now customers don't have to go and pull fiber and run new cables when they want to go to Ethernet. They can reuse their existing wire. So in the Data Highway Plus is something we're going to do in phase 2. For the remote I/O, it was a master with slaves, worked great. Once we go to Data Highway Plus systems, you need to be able to talk from here to here. If all I got to do is talk to here, one master slaves, it works. But we know that all these PLCs, someone wants to plug in and program any PLC, that's more of a peer-to-peer. So these slave devices all send their comms out there. So what we're doing is later, in the later part of next year, we're going to have another device out here that takes all these messages that come out here, see it, find out it's for this, and reroute it back on there. So it's like a router, if you will. It's going to route your messages right back onto the system. So that I'm taking now an architecture that can support remote I/O, and by adding one device, now I can do a true peer-to-peer network and be able to pass my data high speed over that network and repurpose the Belden Bluehost. With that, we can also do the same concept there with Data Highway Plus as we did with remote I/O. We can let the Data Highway Plus stay on the wire and add Ethernet IP to it, so that now my Data Highway Plus devices are still out there. I hang on my Ethernet devices, do all my commissioning, and then turn off the old ones and decommission the old Data Highway Plus over time, and eventually get it to a full Ethernet IP network. And with that, a short presentation. Are there any questions?